This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
At Sierra, you'll always find apparel, footwear, and gear for 20 to 60% less than department and specialty store prices. But right now, it's clearance time, so you can save even more on everything you need to get active and outside. Visit your local Sierra store today.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Red, your lunchtime catch-up on all things Liverpool FC and your daily reminder that the Reds are top of the league. And tonight we take on Tottenham in the EPL Cup semi-final. First leg, of course. In the first leg of the other semi-final, last night, Arsenal were once again the victims of a travesty when the ball made them lose. They weren't ready for the ball. Even though it's the same ball they used against Crystal Palace and against the lower league teams Preston and Bolton that they beat, the ball was the reason that Arsenal lost 2-0 at home last night to Newcastle. The ball. Right. So Newcastle in control of that tie. Look, Arsenal could very easily go up to St. James's and, win 2-0 and go through on penalties or win 3-0. It could happen. It's unlikely, especially without Bukayo Saka, given that they just don't look good going forward at all. And to be fair, didn't look great going forward even when they had Saka. But without Saka, they're very much a clogged toilet of an attack. And I know they scored 3 against Brentford. Just watch those goals back and tell me what you see. Because I don't see Arsenal actually creating much of anything. They're going to struggle to score 3 goals. They're going to struggle to score 2 goals up at Newcastle. I don't think there's much chance they'll get 3. But they could get 2, and they could force it to extra time and penalties, maybe. But Newcastle, right now, you would say, have one foot in the final. We have to get by Tottenham to set up that final. And it won't be easy because they're a good team. I know the league tells us that they're not right now. They've lost, I think, 10 games in the Premier League, which isn't great. But they have an enormous injury crisis. Like, as bad, if not worse, than what we went through last year. They're currently without Vicario. He's not going to be back till maybe March. Doggy is out. He's not going to be back until mid-February at the earliest. Ben Davies, who'd probably be Doggy's backup, is also out for another couple of weeks. Christian Romero, who's their best centre-back, he's out for another couple of weeks. Mickey van de Ven, who's their second-best centre-back, and their cheat code with his pace, he's out for another couple of weeks. And, of course, Ben Davies would also be the backup for him. Richarlison is out, not that you'd mind that. I believe James Maddison and Pat Matar Sarr are both suspended. So that's significant. Mikey Moore, they hope, is back. Bentancur is back. Fraser Forster is a doubt. Radu Dragusin is a doubt because he's ill. And Wilson Odegaard is out, who would be their primary backup on the left wing to Son. And with him not there, when they want to rest Son, they have to play Timo Werner, which at times is worse than playing with 10 men. So defensively, they're just decimated at the moment, and they're missing some important players in other positions, particularly tonight, missing Pat Matar-Sarr, who's, for me, he's their best midfielder right now. When you factor that group in of Sarr, Bissouma, Bentancur, Gray, and Bergvall, I think Sarr is the best of them right now. And obviously Gray is having to play centre-back because of the injuries. So we should be confident going into this one. We should. I don't think it'll be easy, but we should be confident. We will be without Joe Gomez. The hope, I think, is that he's back at the start of February. And then we've got a doubt over Szoboszlai because he's ill. And we'll see what the situation is. Arna said he's not back just yet, but he might be okay for the bench. So we'll see. He said that yesterday. He may have trained yesterday. We'll see. We should be confident. We should. We're top of the league. We're top of the Champions League. We're the best team in Europe right now. I know people felt like the sky was falling in when we drew 2-2 with the United, but I would just ask people to go and look at some of the Liverpool versus Manchester United results from the 90s and 2000s. Remember, this is a period in which United won 13 of 21 titles and came within basically 5 points of winning 4 more. They could have won 17 titles in 21 years with 5 results going differently. I know we point out, look, if you change 4 results over Klopp's tenure, he ends with 3 Champions Leagues and 3 European Cups. United could have won 17 titles and 4 European Cups if you change 7 results. That's the level of dominance that we saw from them. And yet, there were frequently times when we, who were not very good, were able to get results against them. March of 93, we beat them. January 94, a 3-3 draw. March of 95, we beat them. December of 95, we beat them. October 95, a year they won the double, with Cantona coming back from injury, from suspension rather, we went to Old Trafford and got a 2-2 draw. In April of 98, we went to Old Trafford and got a 1-1 draw. In March of 2000, we got a 1-1 draw. We went on a run then under Houllier of beating them. We beat them 2-0 in the league in March of 2001. We beat them 3-1 in the league in March of 2001. And we beat them 1-0 in the league at Old Trafford in January of 2002. March 2003, we beat them in the League Cup final. They went on and won the league that year, the 02-03 season. We got results against them throughout periods where they were incredibly dominant and we weren't very good. Now, we were never as bad by the table as they are now, other than the Gerard Houllier season, which we'd all rather forget. But even at the end of that season, you'll remember the 10-11 season, we beat them 3-1 at Anfield. Kenny had taken over and Suarez was unbelievable. Dirk Kuyt scored the spawniest hat-trick you'll ever see. But we did beat them. So these things happen. In big rivalry games, these things happen. Look, Everton have been garbage for years. They've gotten a couple of results against us recently. And they beat us last season. They beat us a couple of years before that at Anfield. I know there was no fans there, so, did the game even take place? But it happens. So just people need to stop losing their minds. And people also need to stop being so full of recency bias. Because saw this today on Twitter. Someone tweeted, Darwin Nunez is the worst signing in our history. And it infuriates me because he's not even close. He's just not even close. And people want to say, we paid 85 million for him. He's the most expensive player in our history. Right. And what? First of all, we haven't paid 85 million for him because all the add-ons have not been paid. And secondly, price is relative to the point in time where they're signed. So, yes, in terms of just the figure, Darwin costs more than Andy Carroll. Darwin has not been worse than Andy Carroll. And let's just take a little walk down memory lane. Or for some of the younger listeners, this might be stuff you're not aware of. We'll start in the 92-93 season, the first season of the Premier League, and we'll just look at some transfers worse than Andy Carroll. So, 92-93, we paid 2.75 million for Paul Stewart. When Roy Keane joined Manchester United, I think the summer after this, he went for 3.5 million, which was an English record at the time. So 2.75 million was close to a record for English football at that point. And Paul Stewart was absolutely awful for us. Now, I'm not going to disparage the guy. He was a good player in his career, and he went through some horrible stuff, which he's spoken about in different platforms. You can go and look that up yourself. But Paul Stewart was a worse signing than Andy Carroll. So was Torben Picnic, who we paid, I think, 1.5 million for to bring him in from Copenhagen after he'd done well at Euro 92. Dreadful for us. The 93-94 season, we signed Julian Dix and paid a fortune for him, including sending, I want to say it was Don Hutchinson, Mike Marsh, and David Burrows out and paying money on top. We also signed Nigel Clough for 2.75 million. And aside from one game at Anfield against United, where we went 3-0 down and Clough scored twice to drag us back into that game, Nigel Clough was really bad for us. The guy who scored the other goal in that game was Neil Ruddock. We paid £3 million for him. It was pretty close to a record transfer fee for a defender in English football at the time. Neil Ruddock wasn't great for us. Just going to put that there and leave that there. He did once break both of Andy Cole's legs with one tackle, which wasn't really a tackle so much as he just booted him up in the air. We paid 3.6 million for Phil Dabb in the 94-95 season after a World Cup where he had been absolutely carried by Paul McGrath. We paid 3.6 million for him. That same summer, we paid 1.5 million for Mark Kennedy. Didn't work out, but I will have no disparaging of Mark Kennedy. A very, very good individual. Let's move on. 95-96. Well, that's the year we signed Stan Collymore for 8.5 million, which was a record transfer fee, a club record and an English record. Now, Stan had a good first season, not quite living up to expectations, but a good first season, and then it was all downhill from there. We also signed Jason McAteer for big money that year. Didn't quite work out the way we had hoped, but I don't think that was his fault. I just think he was badly used. He was never a wing-back, and Roy Evans decided to make him a wing-back. I think if we put him in central midfield next to Jamie Redknapp and had Redknapp just as the sitter and McAteer go box to box, which was the role he'd really established himself in at Bolton. I think he does much better for us. And then Rob Jones could have stayed at right back where he belonged. And potentially Mark Kennedy could have been that left wing back, a position he showed some promise in, didn't get enough opportunity, and ultimately didn't work out at the club. But Collymore, for certain, a worse signing. All things considered, a worse signing than Darwin Nunez, especially considering we could have signed Les Ferdinand. We were linked so strongly to Les Ferdinand for so long.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
And Les Ferdinand would have been really good. Les Ferdinand would have worked better with Fowler, I think, overall. 96, 97, we signed Patrick Berger. It was a good signing. I think Roy planned to make him the left wing back, honestly. And I think he could have worked out there, but, ultimately it didn't. Moving into 97, 98, this is a horrendous bit of work. So we signed Sean Dundee for £2 million. With respect, really nice guy. One of the worst players to ever play for us at the senior level. We spent £4 million on Oyvind Leonardson, who was awful. Awful. We spent, I think, £7 million on Paul Ince, who was dreadful for us. Paul Ince was pretty much washed by the time we got him from Inter. So, yeah. But Oyvind Leonardson, absolutely a worse signing than Darwin Nunez. 98, 99, Rigobert Song, anybody? £3 million worth? Send Vigard Hegem that year as well. He was a good player, just had injury issues. But he was kind of before his time as well. Like, he was a very attack-minded right back, a really good dribbler of the ball. 99, we got a bit better with transfers. We signed Sammy. We signed Stefan Oncho, Sander Westerveld, Vladi Schmitzer, Didi Hamann, and Emil Heskey. We also signed Tidi Kamara that year, and we signed Eric Meyer on a free, but, it is what it is. So that's fine. We move on. Christian Ziga, he was a worse signing than Darwin for us. We also signed Nick Barmby and Igor Bishkan for massive money. Neither of them really worked out. Oh, 102, we spent £7 million on Chris Kirkland. And it's not his fault. He had horrendous luck with injuries. But Chris Kirkland is a worse signing than Darwin Nunez. Go and look up how many games he played and how much we got when he left. You'll see why. Not his fault. But, Summer of 2002, we signed El Hadj Diouf for £12 million. We could have bought Nicholas Anelka. We bought El Hadj Diouf. We also spent big money on Salif Jow and decent money on Bruno Cheru. All three of them worse signings than Darwin Nunez. And I know younger people will look back at those fees and think, it's not much money. Back then, it was huge money. So, yeah, they are worse signings. 0304, everything there is pretty okay. Kuhl didn't work out, but the fee we paid was very reasonable for the player he was. It's just unfortunate that he got injured quite a bit and his attitude wasn't always the best, but he was a really good player. Harry Kuhl was a really, really good player for Leeds. And if we'd gotten the Leeds version, we'd probably still be singing his name to this day. 0405, Jibril Cisse, like, he plays a part in Istanbul and he scores in the cup final in 06. Ultimately, Jibril Cisse was a very poor signing for us, especially considering it was a club record fee at the time as well. Molientes, I think we paid $6.5 million. He was a disaster for us. Didn't do well at all. Just didn't settle into English football. Didn't seem to like the physicality. It's a shame as well because in the modern game, Molientes is actually the prototypical number 9 for a team like ours. 05, 06, these are all fine. Mark Gonzalez didn't work out, but all the big money signings were good. 06, 07, we signed Dirk for 12 million, 10 million, something in that range. We signed him as a number 9, and ultimately he failed as a number 9, but became a valuable player for us. So not a bad transfer by any stretch. But Jermaine Pennant was. I think we paid 7 million for Jermaine Pennant, and he was dreadful. And we signed him to spam crosses, and yeah, he was awful. I would say Ryan Babel, signed in 07, goes down as one of our worst signings. Given the promise of Ryan Babel, like, when we signed, so that summer we signed Torres and Babel. And there were a lot of people, like experts, saying Babel was going to be the better signing. That these two were going to be the most exciting attacking tandem in European football. Babel was coming out of Ajax, 20 years of age, explosive pace, good dribbler, played like Henry. Probably would have been better at Liverpool if we'd played 4-3-3. Like, we were built to play 4-3-3, but Rafa insisted on playing 4-2-3-1 because for a few years there, you had, for the Dutch national team, a front three of Dirk on the right, Babel on the left, and Bastian Huntelaar as the 9. And they were outstanding together. And we could have had an even better front three with Dirk, Torres, and Babel. But Rafa insisted on making them both play as wingers, play like wide touchline wingers. It didn't suit either of them. And a midfield three of Gerrard and Mascherano either side of Alonso, leave Alonso to sit and just dictate play, have Gerrard go box to box and have Mascherano just roam around, taking the ball off whoever he felt like taking it off, and then giving it to the lads that could play. That would have worked really well. Now, it would have meant we would have needed better fullbacks, but we always needed better fullbacks anyway. Like, Rafa didn't buy one good left back. Houllier didn't buy one good left back. Evans didn't buy one good left back. We were barren at left back. And people will say Fabio Aurelio, he was always hurt. He was always hurt. John Anarisa, I'll take John Anarisa. So Houllier bought one. In the 4 years of Evans, 6 years of Jed, and 6 years of Rafa? 14 years, we got one good left back? Yeah. But Babel ultimately was a failure at the club. And given the promise of him, I think he's right up there. 08-09, we signed Robbie Keane. And we sold him again 6 months later. There's the worst transfer. We lost quite a bit of money as well. Like, we lost about 6 million on a 6-month, basically, loan for Robbie Keane. Now, again, I would put a lot of the blame on Rafa, who used him really poorly. But what about Glenn Johnson? 17 million. The fellow was dross. We also spent 17 million on Alberto Aquilani. They're both worse signings than Darwin. And no, Glenn Johnson didn't get us up the pitch. That was just something fools said. He was crap. 10-11, Andy Carroll. Much worse than Darwin Nunez. Christian Poulsen, much worse than Darwin Nunez. Paul Konchesky, much worse than Darwin Nunez. And I know it was a free, but we gave him enormous wages. Joe Cole, worse than Darwin Nunez. 11-12. Stuart Downing, worse than Darwin Nunez. Charlie Adam, worse than Darwin Nunez. Jose Enrique, worse than Darwin Nunez. 12-13. Fabio Borini, worse than Darwin Nunez. Brendan Rodgers said he was going to have the fans on the edge of their seats. Did he, yeah? Good lad, Brendan. Iago Aspas, worse than Darwin Nunez. Dejan Lovren, considerably worse than Darwin Nunez. Lazar Markovic, worse than Darwin Nunez. Mario Balotelli, worse than Darwin Nunez. And, let's be honest, Adam Lallana had 4 good months in 6 years. Darwin was better last season than Lallana was for any full season at Liverpool. But Lallana kissed all the right arses and never got the bad press. 15-16. Christian Benteke, worse than Darwin Nunez. There are lots of players who've been worse than Darwin Nunez, and that's just from 24 seasons. And we could go back further in the history of the club. There have always been signings by this club that didn't work out. By every club. Every manager has had a failed signing or two. And I'll give you a name, a historic name, of someone that just failed miserably for us. And that's Tony Hateley. Now, when you look at the goals per game, it's not too bad. But we signed him for a club record fee in 1967 and sold him about 18 months later at a considerable loss. Shankly wanted him, signed him, then realized he doesn't work. So, Tony Hateley was a really good player for Notts County and Villa. Would go on and be really good for Notts County again. But yeah, Tony Hateley, absolutely. So the idea that Darwin's our worst ever signing, it's just not true. It's just bullshit, quite frankly. On AnfieldIndex.com, you can find a piece about Trent. You can find a couple of pieces about Arne Slot. You can find a preview of tonight's game. And then there are, of course, plenty of podcasts, including a Scouted that myself and Carl did, where we looked at both the United game and ahead to this one. There is the David Lynch podcast, there is the press conference podcasts, and there is the new Under Pressure. Phil Barker is missing, so Dan Kennett, Cy Brundish, and Hamza. He's not missing. That made it sound like we needed to get a search party going. He's away. He's traveling. So it's Dan Kennett, Cy Brundish, and Hamza having a chat about the draw with United. Kanate coming back, Dom, the game plan, the false 9 thing, what was the plan, etc., etc. Get on it. It is, as always, tremendous from the lads. And get on everything else that Anfield Index is putting out. I'm just looking at how many different titles we have. You've got Media Matters, Euro Incision, Mulby on the Spot. You've got the Under Pressure pod. You've got Jumpers for Goalpost if Jan will ever get his act together. You've got Scouted. You've got Old School from time to time. You've got Money Talks. You've got Minefield. Of course, you've got Post-Match Raw. You've got Fatigue Index. And if you haven't listened to Simon Brundish's series on ACLs, please educate yourself and everybody else with these podcasts. These are brilliant. These are absolutely brilliant. There is, of course, Rival Recon as well. And there is another podcast with me, plus the original AIP and Liverbirds. And Scotia Tommies, how could I forget my good friend Jim and his partner in crime, Jay? We have lots of good stuff here. So make sure you listen to it all. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.